Are you looking for all the latest pro football news and content? Of course you are. Who doesn't love football? The question is, how do you get all the latest pro football news and content? There's so many different pro football podcasts on the internet. Which one do you choose? Which one is the right fit for you? Well, you go with the Cross the Middle Show, one of the fastest growing football podcasts out right now. Over the past year, we've climbed Spotify rankings. It became a show you have to listen to if you're a football fan. Find out if the Ravens will go all the way with Odell Beckham Jr., find out if the Eagles did enough to make it back to the Super Bowl. You'll get all of our best stories for just $1 per month. All you have to do is sign up by clicking the link in the episode description box. Welcome back. It's John Kuzma from the Cross the Middle Show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to talk a little bit about Josh Jacobs. We also have the Tyreek Hill story today. Let's get started with the Josh Jacobs story. Do the Eagles make sense for Josh Jacobs? So Josh Jacobs is frustrated with the Raiders, and they're not coming to an agreement. Josh Jacobs doesn't want to play on the franchise tag, wants a long-term deal, wants to be paid for all the production he provided for this team a year ago. Remember, he was the best running back in football this past year, just completely dominated the National Football League, wants to be taken care of. The Raiders are dragging their feet. So now we're at the point, it's like, what's going on with Josh Jacobs? I mean, this guy is an electrifying player, a guy that is so explosive, great at breaking tackles, does so many things well for that Raiders offense. And if they're not going to take care of him, it's like, what does Josh Jacobs do? Does he try to force a trade to the Eagles? And if he would go to the Eagles, are the Eagles a good fit for Josh Jacobs? So to me, I think if you're the Eagles with that offensive line, you would love to have Josh Jacobs. I mean, Josh Jacobs is an explosive running back that can do just about anything on the football field. Anything you ask of him, he's capable of doing. He's just that special of a player. We all got to see that this past year. And, you know, just because the Raiders don't want to pay him, just because the Raiders aren't going to open up the checkbook and do what they should do, doesn't mean that the Eagles should drag their feet too. If they have a chance to get Josh Jacobs, it almost feels like they have to do that, because Josh Jacobs combined with that offensive line, you would have something there that would be really special if you're the Eagles. And I mean, you look at the guys they have up front, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelce. Come on now, Landon Dickerson. Why would the Eagles not trade for Josh Jacobs? I know they have DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell. Still, Josh Jacobs is like the cherry on top of a really good situation, a guy that is going to bring so much to the table for them. Can you imagine that blocking they have up front when they just gap on over and just, wall everything down? I mean, I could see Josh Jacobs hitting that cutback and going for a big gain almost every time, because the defense has to almost over pursue, because the Eagles are so good at, sliding one way or the other with this offensive line, that if you don't get as many bodies as you possibly can at the point of the attack, they just blow you up, and then it opens up big holes. So you almost have to overcompensate a little bit if you're the defense, and flow as many bodies to the point of attack as you can to try to squeeze those running lanes and fill up those gaps. Then what happens is a good running back's going to hit that cutback and go the distance. I think Josh Jacobs would be perfect in that offense. If things were going well with the Raiders, imagine what he would do with, arguably the best offensive line in football, because the Eagles have something special there with that offensive line. They just get after it. They're maulers. They're so synchronized perfectly. So many good players on that offensive front. You're not going to stop Josh Jacobs in that system. So if I'm the Eagles, get 3 running backs. They had Miles Sanders there and Kenneth Gainwell, and I know they have DeAndre Swift, but you can use DeAndre Swift in the passing game. You can use Gainwell as a guy that comes off the bench and, he breaks off big runs. But you want that cherry on top with Josh Jacobs, just because he's going to put it all together like those other guys aren't capable of doing. I know Kenneth Gainwell did really well in that offense last year, but still, Josh Jacobs is cut from a different cloth. So if you're the Eagles and you have a chance to get Josh Jacobs, you're honestly thinking about doing it, because it's like, we're trying to win Super Bowls around here. That's the Eagles' mindset all the time. That's Howie Roseman's thinking. He wants to win a Super Bowl no matter what. So, yeah, he's going to do whatever he can to get Josh Jacobs, and I think he's smart for doing so because you're not going to stop that offense. It's going to be too high-powered. Josh Jacobs is going to do so many things well for the Eagles offense. And then you have those other guys coming off the bench, DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Gainwell, and, already a rushing attack that is spectacular. Miles Sanders was great in that system. I just think Josh Jacobs is so talented that if you put him in that system, it's on a different level. There's not going to be anything that can match up with that. It's going to take a legendary defense to even come close to that, And, you look at what the 49ers did. They got Javon Hargrave from the Eagles and brought him over on that defense. That's like the defense that can match up. Well, guess what? The 49ers are in the NFC. The Eagles are in the NFC. They ran into each other this past year. If they're going to run into each other again on the way to the Super Bowl, then you're going to want Josh Jacobs to counter Javon Hargrave going over to the 49ers. And I think if they do get him, the 49ers are going to have their hands full stopping that offensive line with Josh Jacobs behind them, just like they had a hard time this past year. Jalen Hurts is still there. We all know how good of a runner he is. Powerful guy, great down near the goal line. You have Josh Jacobs there running the ball too. Suddenly, Jalen Hurts is going to be able to pull the football, and the defense, like I said, is going to have to overcompensate to stop Josh Jacobs. That's going to leave the backside open with Jalen Hurts. Stop and think about all those things you have to defend. It's not going to be easy for a defense. It's going to be damn near impossible. So, yeah, Howie Roseman, I believe, would do it. He would pull the trigger on this deal if he had a chance to do so, because it's a piece that could get the Eagles over the top. He wants to win another Super Bowl. He'll do whatever it takes to win another Super Bowl. Josh Jacobs seems like the piece to the puzzle that they need in this particular scenario. So, yeah, Josh Jacobs to the Eagles makes all the sense in the world for the Eagles. Yeah, they might have to cough up maybe some draft picks and put together a package to get Josh Jacobs. But then again, when your only goal is to win Super Bowls, you got to do some things to make that possible. Sometimes that means giving up a package of players or some draft picks, doing some things you don't necessarily want to do, but will ultimately get you closer to your main goal of winning a Super Bowl. The other story we have is the Tyreek Hill story. So Tyreek Hill said that he wants to have 2,000 passing yards and help the Dolphins win the Super Bowl. Now, it might be a little bit of a surprise, but I actually think 2,000 yards is within reach for Tyreek Hill. He went over 1,700 yards last year, 1,700, and I think he had like 10 yards, 1,710 yards, something like that. He went over 1,700 yards. So 2,000 yards isn't that far out of reach. Justin Jefferson was close last year. It's not that far away for these receivers. They're getting closer and closer. So it's not completely impossible for Tyreek Hill to go for 2,000 yards. It's possible. Now, the Super Bowl thing, I think, is a little bit out of reach because it would just take a miracle for the Dolphins to win a Super Bowl. You look at the teams that are better than the Dolphins. The Chiefs are better than the Dolphins. The Bengals are better than the Dolphins. The Bills are better than the Dolphins. So it's going to take a miracle for the Dolphins to win a Super Bowl. I don't see them beating the Chiefs in any way, shape, or form, or the Bengals. Maybe they might pull out a surprise, pull a rabbit out of the hat and beat the Bills. But the Chiefs or the Bengals, no way. I just don't see it happening. Tyreek is, pumping some life into his team, trying to pump them up and get them ready to play for this upcoming season. I just don't see it happening, though, because it's too far out of reach for them. Their team is not there yet. They don't have the team to beat those upper echelon teams like the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Bills. It's not going to happen. Can they even beat the Chargers? Can they beat the Jags? I mean, they're going to have their hands full with those lower tier playoff teams on the AFC side of the bracket too. So I just don't know about the Super Bowl. 2000, it's possible. It's going to be tough, but look at the environment he's in. They're in Miami. They don't get a lot of snow. So in the second half of the season, it's sunshine and 70-degree weather, which allows you to throw the football, which allows you to play fast. Those things all work in Tyreek Hill's favor. He's going to have more or better rapport with Tua Tagovailoa. So they're going to pick up right where they left off. They should be even better this year because they ironed out a lot of the wrinkles, and they're on the same page more than they were, when Tyreek Hill got traded to the Dolphins that first year, this past year. So that's going to help them a little bit. I think Tua Tagovailoa knows that he needs to air it out every chance he gets to Tyreek Hill for this team to have their best chance at winning. It's all Tyreek Hill and a little bit of Jalen Waddle. So, yeah, they're going to be close. He'll be around the same mark as he was last year. They're going to be explosive, make a lot of big plays. Tyreek Hill is going to work the vertical passing game like he always does. He's basically unguardable when it comes to the deep ball just because he can just run right by these defensive backs. And these safeties always get their angles obliterated because they think they can get over top of Tyreek Hill, and he's just too fast, and he outruns that over top coverage. Happens so many times, and so many people are surprised by Tyreek Hill's speed. That's the one thing with him. He just is so explosive and so fast that you can't game plan for it. You just get out on the field. Next thing you know, he's running by you, and you're like, "Oh shoot! I have to use a bail technique, and I also have to play 7 or 8 yards off him just to keep him in front of me." And even then, he's still striding by you a lot of the times, just because he has so many God-given gifts when it comes to his speed. That's how fast Tyreek Hill is. So 1,700 this past year, over 1,700. Only 300 yards away from 2,000. Certainly possible. I'm not ruling that one out. The Super Bowl, a lot tougher to do. It's going to take a miracle for the Dolphins to get it done. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team yet. They got to be a playoff team before they can be a Super Bowl team. You know what I mean? So get back to the playoffs, win a playoff game, go on a run, and start building the foundation that will help you build this team into a Super Bowl team one day. It has to start there. It doesn't just happen usually out of nowhere. Sometimes it does, but a lot of times these teams build themselves up into contenders, and then they keep building on that. Then they become a Super Bowl contender, a true Super Bowl contender that is at least in the hunt for Super Bowls. Look at the Bengals. They make it to a Super Bowl, don't win it. Well, now they're right there every single year. They had to build themselves up into that Super Bowl contender. Now they have a shot at actually winning a Super Bowl. The Dolphins had to follow the same template. They had to build themselves up into a Super Bowl contender, be a playoff team, start going on deep playoff runs. Then they can get some confidence. They can get some playoff experience. Then maybe they can, take that next step and eventually win a Super Bowl. It takes a little bit, though. Even the Chiefs spent all those years with Alex Smith building their team up into a contender, and then Patrick Mahomes took that team over and helped them win a couple of Super Bowls. But usually don't just, become a surprise team unless you're like the Eagles the first time they won it. They came out of nowhere and won it. That was a team that was able to do that. But usually you got to build it up first, and then you start to turn the corner and become a Super Bowl team. That's all I got for this latest episode of the Cross the Middle Show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm John Kuzma. Sign up for $1 a month. For just $12 per year, you can be a member of the Cross the Middle Show and support pro football news and content. We have all the latest coming at you here on this show. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Go sign up.